fantasy, caught in a landslide, no escape from reality.
Hey guys, what's going on today? My name is Kyle. I'm finally going to be bringing you guys my spoiler-filled thoughts on the film Suicide Squad, which was my most anticipated film of the summer. And today I'm going to be explaining my elongated reasons for why I liked some of this movie and why I disliked a lot of it. So before I talk about my cons, because I have a ton of those for very long reasons, I like to first describe my pros first. Will Smith as Deadshot was excellent casting. I feel like he perfectly nailed down this character. I really feel like Will Smith is back to give us a very charismatic character, but what I like the most that I didn't describe in my spoiler-free review is that he has a daughter, and she of course has a very love-hate relationship with him because she hears from her mom that he kills people, which is exactly what he does. He's a hitman. So when Batman ends up taking Deadshot away from his daughter, you feel a lot of character. I really love the target practice scene with Will Smith. That scene just felt badass and awesome. And I love the sequence where he points the gun at the guy's head. The guy looks at another SWAT man and says, "Okay, if he shoots me, I want you to kill him and then delete my browser history." Also, Batman is in this movie. This is something that I promise you guys, I swear, I did not know Batman was going to be in this movie. That very much surprised me. I know a lot of people knew Batman was going to be in it, but for me, that was something that shocked me so much that I could not in good conscience spoil that in my spoiler-free review. But I'm going to talk more about Batman when I talk about Harley Quinn and the Joker later on in this review. And guys, you know, I really liked Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. She was sexy, seductive, manipulative, violent, just psychotic. And I think that if they make a future Harley Quinn movie, I'll definitely see it, because I think Margot Robbie has convinced me that she was the perfect choice to play this character. And even though she didn't have a lot of great development, I understood her character because I played the Batman games. I've also read up on Harley Quinn, so I know her character. And man, she nailed that character. However, I feel like her storyline for this movie was undeniably rushed. And that is a con, but I think her performance in general was a pro. All the physical stuff she did was great. All her verbal antics were great. Every joke that she made, I basically laughed at. There were a couple that I was like, okay, that's a little bit too dumb for my taste. But her character's not supposed to be very smart. She's a dim-witted person. And I also really like Viola Davis's performance. She was scary, and I'm going to talk about that later on, why I think it was somewhat of a negative, but I do think it's a positive. She was a character that actually scared me more than the actual antagonist herself. So that actually was kind of bad. My favorite action sequence, and I think the only really great action sequence, is when they first fight in the city and Will Smith jumps on the car and starts shooting all of these guys. That was awesome. I liked the music in the background. I felt like that really worked in that action sequence and that action sequence alone. So those are basically my pros with the movie, and as you can tell, that's not a lot, because I was very disappointed with this film. So now let's talk more in depth about the cons. And I first want to talk about the relationship between Harley and the Joker. This subplot is one of the most rushed subplots and crammed in subplots I have ever seen in a feature film. Because they took Mad Love, which I have read. I promise you, I have read. But I think the decision to really just rush it was terrible, because this movie was very rushed. When you hear about the production, this movie was absolutely rushed. David Ayer only had 5.5 weeks to come up with the script, which is a very, very bad thing. And the fact that this man once wrote Training Day, which is a very intense film, and I really enjoyed that, it's very upsetting to me that he was rushed to write the script, because he should have taken more time. If this movie could have come out in 2017, had he made a better script, they should have done that. Now let's talk a little bit more about the Joker, played by Jared Leto. I personally was not the biggest fan of him, and I'm going to describe exactly why. Because when everyone saw the trailers for this movie, we were thinking, okay, he was kept in secrecy for a reason. We were all anticipating something big to happen in the movie. But the big problem is that he's only in the movie for like 5 minutes of screen time. Every time he appeared on screen, it was almost as if I was veering into another movie. It didn't feel connected or jointed at all. It felt so incoherently disjointed and disconnected from the entire film that it was just like, why is he in the movie at all? Either keep him in the film with the elongated performance, or don't at all. Because it is just shameful. The producers thought, you know, that's a good idea. And also, Jared Leto himself has come out and stated that there is a lot of footage on the cutting room floor, and more specifically, if they were to put in every single sequence with the Joker, they could have made a standalone film. I think there are things that we all disliked about this movie, and one of the top things is that most of the other characters barely have any development at all. I can only tell you certain things about a few of the characters, but for instance, Captain Boomerang was a character I actually kind of enjoyed watching because Jai Courtney actually had some charisma with him, but I really couldn't for the love of me talk to you guys more information about Captain Boomerang, because he's kind of just there. And that's the problem with a lot of the other characters. They are just there for the mission. And let's take Slipknot, for instance, which is a character I didn't even know about until I finished watching the movie. Because his character is not even introduced. They don't even say, this is Slipknot. They don't do that at all. And he's only in the movie for about 3 minutes, which is less than the Joker. Now, when I researched Slipknot, I realized this guy's actually pretty awesome. And they decided to kill him really fast. You guys remember Jimmy Olsen from Batman v Superman, right? He was that photographer who was working for the CIA, who was killed with basically 2 minutes of screen time. Yeah, that's exactly how they treated Slipknot in this movie. And that, once again, is insulting. It's like the producers are punching comic book fans in the balls. I also didn't know a lot about the character Katana, and to be perfectly honest, and I'm being perfectly honest, I didn't know who her character name was until I read the credits of this movie. I'm serious. Because her character is not only very forgettable, she was just another person who was really just there to be there for the mission. That's it. She randomly, and I mean randomly, arrives on the airplane, having no introduction, no exposition, nothing. Also, let's talk a little bit about Rick Flag, who's played by Joel Kinnaman, or as most of us know, the PG-13 RoboCop. I'm not a fan of Joel Kinnaman. I think he's just an okay actor. In this movie, I think he once again is just okay. I mean, he does have some moments to shine and be a badass, but he's just alright to me. Sure, he has a relationship with Enchantress that was actually kind of cool, but his relationship with the Suicide Squad to me was just very awkward, forced, and tedious. But if there's anything people have come out and said as a negative about Deadshot, other than the fact he doesn't wear the mask, that didn't really bother me, is that his relationship 1v1 with Rick Flag changed instantly, where he did that awesome Will Smith pointing the finger at someone stare, and then 2 minutes later he just decided, you know what, we're going to protect this guy. That to me was not really a plot hole. Some people call it a plot hole. That to me wasn't, because if you listen to what Amanda Waller said on the little iPad screen, is that if Rick Flag dies, then she will kill all of them. Hence the reason why Will Smith says, he dies, we die. So even though that's not really a plot hole in my eyes, it was very rushed and kind of abrupt at the same time. And also, in that exact same sequence, there's a moment where Harley Quinn just randomly gets in some elevator. This is a prime example of how the editing in this movie is crap. It is terrible. The way this movie is edited is so choppy. And that sequence is there to just prove that they had no idea what they were doing. They had no idea how to lighten up this sequence. And you could tell this was a reshoot scene because you heard that they had to reshoot certain scenes after Batman v Superman came out because we all complained that the tone of the movie was way too dark. But they still mismarketed the movie because it was still very dark and grim, but not so miserable. I wasn't feeling miserable watching this movie. And I think a partial reason why is because of the soundtrack. Now, many people have either praised or heavily criticized the soundtrack. And I'm actually one of the people who really praised it when it first came out because I like the fact that they picked out some really cool songs for the cast, the introduction of the cast, and I'm still going to side by that. I don't disagree. I think the introduction to the cast with those awesome pieces and those awesome scores, I think really worked in my opinion. The issue is that they did not work in the action sequences, save for that first one where Will Smith jumps on the car. This is one of the few things in Suicide Squad that many people want to compare to Guardians of the Galaxy. And I'm going to talk about that later on in this review because I want to save that towards the ending. Even though I don't think the whole Deadshot with Flag thing wasn't a plot hole, what I do think is a plot hole is Amanda Waller's sudden change in character motivation because she suddenly kills every single person in that room once they save her. She then looks at Flag and Deadshot and says, oh, it was above their pay grade, or, they weren't classified for it. So, you mean to tell me that she hired all of these people to work for her with this entire mission to know the characters, and then you just killed them off? If someone knows the explanation to that, I would love for them to tell me, because that makes no sense. I mean, what the hell? This came out of nowhere. And it's one of those things that just can't be explained because there's no dialogue for that. If this is one of the things that's going to be in some kind of Ultimate Edition or Extended Cut on the Blu-ray, that's another example of the studios really just being morons for not giving us explanations. Because by not doing that, you're going to receive criticism for your film. So instead of actually giving in a reason or explaining why she did this sudden change, they just decided to opt out of it. And I really was not a fan of the final action sequence. I wasn't a fan of them fighting Enchantress or the African ancient princess or whatever you want to call her. It just felt very Zack Snyder-esque because there was a ton of slow motion, as I stated in my spoiler-free review, but it's absolutely true. There was way too much slow motion, and the way it was edited was very off. And also, guys, you can tell that there are a ton of continuity errors because you just know that certain things were either reshot or things were completely cut from the movie. But that's not exactly what I want to discuss, because even though I wasn't a big fan of that, what I think killed the scene for me is when she tries to implant, kind of like Scarlet Witch, those memories as if they could have a different kind of life. But I think the weirdest one is Harley Quinn's memories or flashback or future event, whatever you want to call it. In this dream, she has 2 kids and she's married to this guy who looks like a regular cured Joker, I guess. So is that Harley Quinn's plan all along? Does she want the Joker to be cured? Because didn't she fall in love with the Joker despite the fact that he was crazy? Didn't she fall in love with the crazy, psychotic Joker? Why does she want it to be cured? Why does she want a normal life? She is a psychopath. It makes no sense to me. None. When you spot lapses in logic throughout your theatrical experience and not from what you think after you watch the movie, that to me is a major problem. Because the story is not structured well. It is one of the most generic cliched stories I've seen in a long time, and it feels like just another comic book movie. That's exactly how it feels to me right now. And I should not have felt that way, because everything that was leading up to the movie was, it was going to be very special, very different, and very exciting. Now, I did promise I was going to talk about Batman. This was the Batman that felt very close to the comics and the character from the Arkham games. Ben Affleck is really surprising me once again, and I'm really excited for a solo Batman film because I think he's going to put a lot of his special talent in, but every single appearance he made to me just felt very justified and powerful. Specifically the one where he tries to apprehend the Joker and Harley Quinn. Now there's a very controversial sequence that happens right here, but what I really thought was funny was when he just punches Harley Quinn out. I thought it was actually kind of funny. So he takes her to the Batmobile and tries to give her CPR. But it also sounds like he's trying to kiss Harley Quinn. Now, I'm not exactly sure if that's the case because a lot of people have brought that up, but I thought that was kind of weird during the film because I thought to myself, wait, is he kissing Harley Quinn? Why would he do that? I thought he was giving her CPR. To me, it didn't make any sense, but I liked every single time Batman was shown on screen, and I also liked the mid-credit sequence where Amanda Waller passes the documents for the Justice League, and that's of course how Batman found out who each member was. So as I stated towards the beginning of this review, the soundtrack of Suicide Squad is one of the few things that compares it to Guardians of the Galaxy. But I do think these movies are very different, and I'm going to explain why I think Guardians of the Galaxy is the far superior movie. Because despite having a plot about villains who turn heroes, that movie did a great job of character development. It set up all the characters really well, and if you ask me about any characters, I can give you at least 6 traits or facts about them. Whereas the Suicide Squad characters are radically underdeveloped, they randomly show up on screen, and there's really barely any time to connect with them because we're already into the mission. With Guardians of the Galaxy, we connected with the characters before they went on their mission. Before the prison break, we got to know all the major characters in the film. So guys, those are my spoiler-filled thoughts about Suicide Squad. As you guys know, I was very disappointed and let down with this film. I think as most people were. So, what do you guys think about Suicide Squad? I'd love to hear your comments, so send them in the comment section below. And guys, thank you so much for watching my reviews. As always, I had a blast doing this spoiler review, even though I had a lot of cons to talk about. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and stay tuned.